Let's talk Autistic History and the Autism Wars. This is part 24 of a series. So I'm going to share now what the autistic community was doing in these early years. We just talked about Cure Autism Now and the influence of the Hollywood celebrities and movie producer John Shaystack and his wife Portia Iverson, and what that segment of the autism community was up to. Now I'm going to share with you an article called Autism Network International, the development of a community and its culture, and this was created by Jim Sinclair in 2005. So this is a long piece, so it will take a few videos to share it all, but I think it's really important that we see what the autistic community was doing while the autism community was getting all this notice in the national conversation and general public, and the autistic community was not getting that kind of attention. That didn't mean there wasn't a lot going on, it just no one was aware of it. So I want to share how Autism Network International came about, how they built autistic community from there, and all of that. It's really detailed but important, I think, to share. So here we go. It starts off here. The American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language 2000 defines community in part as a group of people having common interests, a group viewed as forming a distinct segment of society, similarity or identity, and sharing, participation, and fellowship. Its entries for culture include the totality of socially transmitted behavior patterns, arts, beliefs, institutions, and all other products of human work and thought. These patterns, traits, and products considered as the expression of a particular period, class, community, or population, and the predominating attitudes and behavior that characterize the functioning of a group or organization. Nearly all operative terms in those definitions would seem to be at odds with the traditional view of autism as profound impairment in social functioning. Autistic people are seen as lacking the ability to share common interests with others, disconnected from social participation and fellowship, and inaccessible to social transmission of behaviors and attitudes. How then can we speak of autistic community and autistic culture? Yeah. This article will describe how one particular group of autistic people joined together on the basis of common interests and grew into a community. Along the way, I will tell you a bit about the culture that has developed within that community. And again, I'm reading the words of Jim Sinclair, so when they say I, that's Jim Sinclair speaking. It is my hope that through this introduction to my community, you will begin to reconsider many of the assumptions you may have about autistic social characteristics. Is it always correct to view differences between the behavior of autistics and NTs as symptoms of some disorder in autistic people? Is it necessarily helpful to respond to such differences by trying to teach autistic people to emulate NT social behavior so they can fit in with NT culture? And again, NT, if you are not familiar with NT, it's short for neurotypical, non-autistic people, yeah? So what alternatives might there be for addressing social difficulties between autistic and NT people? These are some questions you should ask yourself as you read this article, or in this case, as you hear this article. But this article is available online. Do a Google search for Autism Network International, and it will come up. So here's a disclaimer by Sinclair. They say, I can only report about the culture that has developed within the Autism Network International community. Other autistic communities may have very different cultures. To the best of my knowledge, ANI was the first autistic community to be created naturalistically by autistic people, and it remains the largest autistic-run organization to have physical gatherings of autistic people. Now, this article is in 2005, so those details will be different for today in 2023. So this section is titled First Encounters. Autism Network International was created by a handful of verbal autistic people who had made contact with each other via a pen pal list maintained by a parent-run organization. A few of us had also met each other in person at autism conferences, but typical autism conferences run by and for NT parents and professionals do not tend to be very good places for autistic people to connect meaningfully with each other. There's simply too much going on, too many people, too much movement, too much noise, often fluorescent lights, and above all, the overwhelming onslaught of speakers and articles and exhibits, all stressing that there's something terribly wrong with us, that we're a horribly defective type of human, and that our very existence is a source of never-ending grief for our families. Some of us came to autism conferences anyway, because we had no other way to meet others like ourselves. But even if we did happen to find other autistic people there, the environment was very hostile from both a sensory and an emotional standpoint. At best, meeting at conferences gave us a chance to find out about the existence of someone we might want to get to know better, and to exchange contact information so we could follow up later, usually by means of writing letters. Not many of us were on the internet at that time. In February 1992, Donna Williams came to the U.S. to promote her first book, Nobody Nowhere. During her trip, she took a few days away from the book tour to visit with Kathleen Listener, now Kathy Grant, and me, two of the autistic people she had been corresponding with through the pen pal list. I drove to St. Louis, Missouri, where Kathy lived, and we all stayed together in Kathy's apartment. Donna's description of that visit can be found on pages 184 through 187 of her second book, Somebody Somewhere. We spent 2 or 3 days together in a place where everyone was autistic and where there were only 3 of us instead of a large crowd. We were all somewhat familiar with each other through our written correspondence. Kathy and I had also met briefly in person at a conference or two. The combination of these factors produced a new kind of autistic encounter that was vastly different from meeting other autistic people at NT conferences. Donna's description reads in part: despite thousands of miles, our world concepts, strategies, and experience even came down to having created the same made-up words to describe them. Together, we felt like a lost tribe. Normal is to be in the company of one like one's self. So I'm going to pick up again in the next video where we're leaving off with Donna Williams, an autistic from Australia who wrote a book and was here visiting in the United States. So we will pick back up there, and thank you for learning a bit of autistic history with me.